Okay, so at this stage, we're going to make a mortise and tenon joint. Now, the first thing to do will be to find the middle of the piece of wood in the same way as you've done before. And then you use the tri-square to make sure that it's going to be at 90 degrees. Also, don't forget to mark down the sides as well by putting a dot on the sides. And in this case, I've actually looped it all the way around, but you don't necessarily need to. You could just loop it on the top and then the two sides. But if you want to make sure that it is perfectly 90 degrees and it's fine all the way around, then looping it is a good idea. Now, if you use the bent chuck and push it up against the bent chuck and pull back 3 times on the line, and then you push forward firmly to start cutting through. Don't forget to put your index finger on the right hand side, so that's your index finger on the right, and put your head over it and keep checking that you are sawing straight down the line. Okay, if you want to clamp this up with a G clamp or a quick release clamp, stop it moving around, then you can. Obviously, it's a good idea just to sand down the edges to make sure that you don't get any splinters. So a bit of sanding board there just helps to make sure that you're safe. Okay, so at this stage, I'm going to mark out for the tenon part of the mortise and tenon joint. And this section is called the tenon because it's all cut out with the tenon saw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position the chisel right in the middle and just mark either side, and then set up the marking gauge in a similar way to what we did with the finger joint. So line it up with one of the points and tighten the marking gauge. And then I'm going to use this distance for everything now all the way around. And if I use exactly the same marking gauge distance for all different parts of marking out, then I know that it'll be fine. It'll be marked out accurately. And then it will link then with the other piece that we're using over here. So you need to mark the top and down both sides with the marking gauge. Okay. And I'm also going to mark the other piece of wood, and this bit's called the mortise part, and you can use, or they would use a mortising machine, but we're going to use a chisel to remove the timber from the middle of this. Again, just using the same settings on the marking gauge. I'm just going to mark along the length on either side. And then I'm using a pencil just to mark in the groove, just so it's clear, and they should line up with each other perfectly. Now, I'm going to work out the thickness of the piece of wood, so I'm going to use this piece of wood on top as a guide and just mark it with a dot. I know exactly where the thickness is, and then again I need to loop it all the way around at this stage, so that, because I'm going to be cutting off from lots of different angles, so it's important that you mark all the way around. Do not forget to make sure that the stock is pushed firmly up against the piece of wood, otherwise it won't be at 90 degrees. Now, I'm going to bring in the marking gauge, so I'm going to use the ruler, push the ruler up against the stock. I'm going to position the distance 1/2 centimetre or 5 millimeters from the spur, the tip of the spur, to the stock of the marking gauge and tighten it. And on the opposite side to the lines that you drew before, so not the lines going across, so it's the opposite lines, sorry, the opposite direction, then going to mark all the way around 5 millimeters in. run a pencil through the gap just so it's clear and can be seen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the middle. So I'm placing the piece of wood. I'm just rewind that a little bit. I'm positioning the piece of wood in the middle because I want the tenon section to be coming out of the middle of this piece of wood. Because this would help in a situation where you were making a frame where you had a piece of wood coming from the middle. So I'm going to position it in the middle and I'm going to mark either side of the piece of wood with a sharp pencil. Don't forget to make sure that your pencil's sharp. Okay, now I'm not quite done yet because I need to then measure in from those lines 5 millimeters because I'm going to make my tenon a bit smaller than that thickness. So you measure in 5 millimeters and then again mark that off. So the section I'm removing will be the bit in the middle. Again, remember to scribble the waste section that you want to remove. And you'll see on this, I'm removing all of that side, and the only bit I'm going to keep is the bit in the middle. So all that needs to go. So everything there needs to go as well. Okay. Okay, so at this stage, I'm going to start with the tenon source. This is the tenon part of the mortise and tenon joint. Place it at 45 degrees, line it up, pull back 3 times on the waist side of the line, and then start cutting through down to the marker. Okay, it's really useful to put it at 45 degrees so you can see clearly down this side, but also you can see down this side. And I'm going to then do the other side of it. So again, on the waist side of the line, pull back 3 times, and you can saw that section. And we'll then flip it over and do the same on the other side. Just going to fast forward it. Again, waist side of the line, and just mark it out. Sorry, and saw it out. Okay, then you put it vertically and then just saw right down to the line to make sure that it's in the right position across. So there is quite a lot of sawing to do on this one. So now what I did was I flipped it around. So I've done the sawing on this side, so then I'm going to saw the 5 millimeter gaps again on the waist side of the line. So I'll fast forward this. So sawing down to that, same on the other side. So it's just a little bit that I'm removing at this stage. And then I've just flipped it over. So I'm then going to do 45 degrees on the other side. And then vertically through. Don't forget, at this stage, you need to keep your saw fairly level and stop when you get down to the line to make sure that you've done it, you've cut it all off down to that line. Okay. Now, the next stage is I'm going to use my engineer's device just to help hold it in place when I saw along these lines, and you'll see quite a lot of pieces of wood start to come off. Don't forget to clamp down your engineer's device to the table with a proper G clamp and make sure it's secure. So you'll see in a second, I'll start sawing on the waist side of the line again, and these bits, loads of sections should start to come off now. I'm just fast forwarding this. Just be very careful not to take too much if you don't want to make the bit in the middle weak. Okay, so as you can see, we can get a better position. It's just a small section now that's left in the middle, ready then, which will then slot into this section, which will be the mortise part of the design. So at this stage, I'm going to measure in, I think it was about 2.5 centimeters, and I'm going to cut off I'm going to reduce the size of my tenon I don't want it to go all the way through. I want it to stop up just about 3/4 of the way into here. I want it to stop. So I'm just going to trim that bit down. Again, place it in the engineer's vise. It just helps to hold it in position a bit better. You can have this coming all the way through, but it actually looks better if it doesn't. And you can only just, you almost lose that inside the design, and it's just there as a to hold it firmly in place. Now at this stage, I placed my Mortice section into the engineer's vise, and I'm pushing down firmly with my chisel. Try and remember the bevel should always be on the waste side, so you always have the bevel on the inside here, and the flat side should be on the outside edge. The bevel will damage the edge of the piece of wood if you don't, so it will actually just dint it in and it looks messy. So you'll see that I will always have the flat edge of the chisel on the outside edge. Okay, so I'm going to start with is I just hit down about 3 times firmly on one of the sides, and then from the middle hit down firmly, and then if I lever back, that bit should then pop out. Okay, and you repeat on the other side. So 3 times firmly, 3 or 4 times firmly, and then this time you've got to angle a slight angle on it to wedge it out. So you're either going to use the chisel as a wedge or as like a lever the bits of wood out. So you just go a bit deeper in the middle. Okay, and then lever back. And again, that section should be out. Just try not to lean on the edges when you're levering. Now you can tidy up the edges again by just slicing down the sides like this, and it just tidies up the edges. Now again, you just keep going until you get down to this depth. Okay, so you can check it with a metal ruler later, or you can check it by just putting it in, just to make sure it fits. And obviously you've gone down deep enough. Okay, remember you need to constantly go around and keep slicing the edges to tidy up the edges of the cut. Keep it vertical, otherwise you'll end up with a slight taper inside, and then this bit won't fit. So you just keep, I'll fast forward it a little bit now. Just keep going until you get down to the required depth. It gets a little bit harder as it goes down towards the bottom, because it's difficult to lever it out without leaning against the edges. So that's why we came in 5mm, so that we can lean a bit against the sides without damaging you won't see it, it'll be hidden underneath the joint. Just checked it, but it didn't quite fit, it was just slightly too raised. Just need to go down a little bit deeper. And just make sure that all sections in the middle of it have been removed. Just be very careful of your hand here, because it's very tempting to get your hand in the way of the chisel and then you end up cutting your hand. Okay, so that looks fairly secure and down and firm, and that'll do as a nice mortise and tenon joint. Okay, just check it out, make sure it's okay all the way around, and there it is. Okay, thank you for watching.